Hi folks, welcome to Set Up Our Homestead. This is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Wow, there's so much to talk about. A lot has been going on over the last few days, as I'm sure most everyone is aware of that, unless you've been living under a rock or only watching the mainstream news, because while they're covering it, they're certainly not covering everything. But obviously the protests that have turned into rioting and violence, and it's going crazy. And so while there's a lot going on and a lot of different things to talk about, sometimes when there's so much, when it comes to making a video, I sometimes struggle with where to focus the video in, because there's just so much. So I'm going to try to do that today and focus on a few things. So I'm obviously not going to probably cover everything that's going on. On a lighter note, on a humorous side, something that I saw floating around online a while back, maybe a week or so ago. And while it's humorous, it does make you think. And it was one of those memes or whatever they call them. And it said something to the effect of, well, what chapter of Revelation are we in this week of 2020? And that's what it sounds like a lot of times. It's what it feels like. There's always something going on. And it's something that I remember back, I believe it was in November, maybe December. I made a video talking about how I had a gut feeling, and most of it was a gut feeling, but also it was just looking at how things were progressing politically, economically, global economics, that I felt that, this next year at that time, which would have been 2020, was going to be a very important year, and I was afraid that there was a lot of things that was going to happen. And well, sure enough, and I'm not saying that I'm good at predicting or seeing the future or anything like that, but it's definitely happening, and more so than what I think thought. So before I get started on talking about the anarchy and chaos that's happening all over the United States, I want to make it clear. Number one, I'm former law enforcement, and one of the things that disgusted me, and one of the reasons why I lost interest and lost the heart of being in law enforcement, the drive, was because I saw the viciousness and the hatred that was in some officers, and some of it was directed towards people of color and their race, but it wasn't just that. It was really more so about compliance and having almost seeming to have no humanity left in them. I'm not saying that about all law enforcement, certainly not. But what I saw, being on the inside, seeing a law enforcement officer that seemed to not care about using some level of violence that was unnecessary against someone, it wasn't just that. What I saw was even bigger. And it was the corruption further up the food chain, so to speak, and the officers, especially upper-ranking officers, commissioners, mayors, on up the food chain, that really have the control over law enforcement. And I saw the corruption there, and realized that law enforcement stopped being a protect and serve agency a long, long time ago. And so, but with that being said, if a man has died, and a family has lost, someone, and so because of that, I want to, say that I definitely and completely have sympathy for that, and I don't think that is anything connected with what we're seeing going on. And it's a shame that that the violence that is happening is so much overshadowing the fact that potential violence and violence has happened. And when I say potential, I'll get to that in a minute, has happened towards an individual, again, by law enforcement, that was completely unnecessary. But here we are. And you know, there's a lot of things going on, like a lot of questions, like why this case? Sorry, the goats are over here in the in the weeds, and they're distracting me as I'm sitting here. They're like they're trying to climb up a tree or something. I don't know. Anyways, they're crazy. If any of you have goats, you know they're just nuts. You know, you've got the coincidence of this happening right as people are locked into their homes for 2 to 3 months or longer. They are just, you know, have this cabin fever. They're upset. They're scared. They're angry. You know, there's all these different emotions going on with people, and then something like this happens, and it's like a powder keg waiting to go off. And then here we are with all this very quickly progressing from peaceful protests, which that has happened in some areas, to this violent anarchy, chaos, rioting that in some ways you could say it's never been seen before in the United States, at least some of the level that has happened in some of these cities. But is everything as it seems? You know, you guys know me. I'm always one to at least be open and interested in the various conspiracies that might be floating around. And so I've looked into some of the stuff that's been, you know, being said with this case. And I'll have to admit, there's some stuff that seems pretty fishy. You know, the officer and the guy that was killed have known each other for about 17 years, worked together for about 17 years at the same place. There's all kinds of weird things about, like, the officer's neighbors say that they didn't even know he was a police officer. There's been reports that the guy owns property and stuff that he shouldn't be able to afford, being a police officer. There's just some really strange things going on with it, and so it's really, in a lot of ways, it's starting to smell like some type of orchestrated event. I'm not saying the guy didn't die. It's very possible that he did really die, but it doesn't mean that the whole thing wasn't pre-planned to happen at the right time, where all these groups across the United States just happen to be able to mobilize so quickly and go out into the streets. I don't know. It does not discount the fact that there is police violence out there, and it happens to minorities, and it happens to white folks, and it happens to everyone, because we've given our local law enforcement and state level and federal law enforcement far too much authority, unchecked authority. But let's get on with what's happening with these riots and stuff. Folks, this is more than a powder keg, the riots, really. It's like someone's got a bottle of nitroglycerin and is just sitting there shaking it, waiting for it to explode. And I know some people say, well, it's already exploded. No, I don't think it has yet. There's all kinds of stuff I've been looking at, reported that, instructions that's being accidentally dropped by people in these crowds that are connected to Antifa, directing them to how to act and how to react to things. But some of this documentation also indicates that a lot of the law enforcement is part of Antifa and is helping them, orchestrate this and to make things worse. Make no mistake about it. The hard left, the communists, for over 100 years has wanted a revolution here in the United States. And maybe they think this is their moment. This is their time. It certainly appears that that's what they're trying to do. As of today, there's been some very credible threats made by Antifa and other organizations they work with, that they're going to be moving into the suburbs and even maybe into the rural areas. There are pallets of bricks randomly showing up in neighborhoods in suburbia. Just happen to be where they claim that they're going to be marching tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but this has gone far beyond any type of civil rights activism. I think that there's probably 3 groups, or at least you could classify everyone out doing this into 3 groups. You've got the group of people that are peaceful protesters, and they truly have the desire in their heart to see change, to see positive change in our system. Probably most of them are left-leaning, but there's certainly some conservative, right-leaning people out there protesting too, and saying, listen, enough is enough with this police state. Then you have the people that are looters, and I actually today watched an interview with one that they arrested in LA, and he just said, they asked him, they said, well, are you doing this because of this Floyd guy that was murdered by the police officer? He's like, not really. I'm just trying to get some stuff. I want to get some stuff. I want to make some money, get some stuff. And so you've got a group of people they're just opportunists. They're taking advantage of the situation. They have no morals, obviously, whatsoever, and they're taking advantage of the situation, running in and looting these stores and stealing whatever they can so that they can make a quick buck. Then you have the third group, and the third group is probably pushing the second group. But the third group, I feel, this is all my opinion, the third group, these are the Antifa, BLM, these organizations that are being supported by these billionaires like Clintons and Soros and others that are really trying to bring about revolution, anarchy, chaos, whether it be to cause the president problems come November, or even something even more nefarious where they could actually bring about a revolution here in the United States. If you look at polling, polling shows that the majority of young people would openly vote for an openly communist candidate, that they want communism. And the way things are going, I remember reading something that predicted that somewhere by the 2030, 2040, that there would be enough of them and enough of the older people died off that they would possibly be the majority of voters. This hard left. We're not talking your typical Democrat liberals. We're talking people that openly want communism. And so I think that's the third group. And the third group is taking advantage of the other 2 groups. And the third group's the ones that you're seeing going in and setting fires to Capitol buildings and police stations and banks, and doing things not to loot and steal, but to bring about chaos and destruction. And so I think that's the ones that's the real danger, the ones that we really have to worry about. They hate you and I. They hate us regardless of what color you are. They hate us regardless of what religion you are. They don't even care if you're a Republican or Democrat. They view you as someone that's just part of the system, and that you're living on land that's stolen. You have money that was stolen from them, and they have a right to what you have, and they want it all taken and redistributed so that everyone is equal. I a few years ago did a little research into these groups, these very hardcore communist, anarchist groups, and these people are pretty scary. Now, scary when it comes to their desires, to what they believe. They're not scary so much in the fact that many of them, well, I don't know how to say it. They're kind of that mom and basement video game kind of. They're not they're not the most manly of men, many of them, but it doesn't mean that enough of them together couldn't cause enough havoc, and we're seeing that they can. But these people they hate us. They hate you. They hate me. And they don't care what you stand for or what you believe. They just hate you. And they want this whole system. They want it to collapse, and they want it to this communist, utopian, anarchist society to rise up and to take over. And that way they don't have to do anything and they get all your stuff. These are the people that are really causing a lot of problems. Now, out here where I live, the odds of them showing up are pretty slim. But some of you live in suburban areas. Some of you live just outside of town, and you could possibly see that. I've seen reports today of them claiming or promising to show up in cities that you would never believe. These little bedroom communities outside of the town, and they're showing up. But what if you live out like this? They're probably not going to show up out here, but here's what could happen. They put their junk out online, and while the majority of the people that live out where I live are, conservative, church-going type people, doesn't mean that they don't have teenagers at home that play their video games and that they're eating up this, Antifa communist crap. And when they see them talking about, hey, we got to go out and destroy, it doesn't mean that they might not sneak on your farm at night and burn your barn to the ground or burn your car to the ground or kill your animals. Where I used to live, the farmer had a lot of cattle, big farm down the road from us. And someone had gone out in his field with a AR-15, they believe, and just shot up a bunch of his cattle. Just because. That's the kind of stuff we could see happen. So, trying to wrap this video up, what I'm getting at, amongst all the craziness that's going on with these riots and these communists and Antifa and all that kind of stuff that's going on, how it affects you individually, well, in many ways it can affect you, but right now, could there be a security issue? Absolutely. And the closer you are to a larger city, the more you have to worry. A city, the city that's not too far, well, it's a couple hours from us, Springfield, Missouri. I mean, that's not OPSEC there, that's too far away. It's not a big city. They've been having a lot of protests there, mostly peaceful. A lot of places in Arkansas, some towns in Arkansas. So what I'm saying, even here in the Ozarks, it's starting to pop up. So the odds of it happening to you, I was watching that it was even some in like North Dakota, and I thought, my goodness, North Dakota, I've been up there before. There's nothing in North Dakota. But the odds of it coming to you, if this thing continues to progress, might be pretty good. So certainly keep up your security. This coronavirus stuff may not have affected your security, procedures too much. That was more lockdown and survival mode. But this what's happening now, you need to look over your security plans, and you definitely need to, review them and maybe even start enacting some more stringent security plans on your property, because even if you live out like I do, it doesn't mean some crazy kid living in his mama's basement out here in the sticks that hates the world and is depressed and angry may not take the opportunity to sneak on your property and do some destruction. Maybe you can stop him, but maybe you won't. So you need to up your security, because there's just some it's crazy right now. I mean, they're around the White House setting fires. It's globally. There's several countries now that are protesting. Are we looking at civil war, World War III? Man, with all that's going on, it could happen, folks. So anyways, I've let the video go longer than I wanted to, and probably haven't covered most of what I wanted to cover. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'll probably make some more on this subject as it keeps going, because this is a big deal and we need to talk about it, and where this could be pushing us down the road, where this is all headed, especially considering, everything else that's happened in the last 6 months. All right, folks, stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next video.